The bad news is that most businesses fail. The good news is that rarely do these business failures happen instantly and without warning, which means there were a series of mistakes made over time, and more than likely a few red flags or warning signs that were missed or completely overlooked. Sometimes these are obvious, like failing to adapt to changing market trends or ignoring the competition. But more often than not, these mistakes are hard to see and even harder to catch. Sneaky, tricky little things that weasel their way into your business and destroy you from the inside out. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom here. Because I'm not only going to show you what the most common and dangerous business-destroying mistakes are, I'll also share exactly what to look out for so you can avoid them. So let's dive in, starting with mistake number 1. We, as business owners, entrepreneurs, marketers, or creators, tend to have overachieving, workaholic, perfectionist tendencies. Whether people like us naturally get drawn to this kind of work, or whether the work necessitates developing these kinds of attitudes and behaviors is up for debate. But what isn't up for debate is how this often leads to developing a kind of lone wolf mentality, where you just lock yourself inside, all alone, hustling and grinding, and only coming up for air when is absolutely necessary. The problem with this approach, though, is that it puts you in kind of a bubble, a vacuum, an echo chamber. Just me, myself, and I. And when you operate this way, you miss out on not only human interaction and connection, which is important for mental health, but you also limit the number and variety of new ideas and insights and experiences that you have access to, all of which are important to help you stay connected and ahead of the curve. There's an expression in the business world that says your network determines your net worth, and it highlights the fact that other people are pretty important to your overall success in business. Another way of putting this that you may have heard is that success isn't about what you know, it's about who you know. Or, though slightly more confusing, it's not about who you know, it's about who you know knows. Or the ultimate, it's not about who you know knows, but what the who you don't know knows, and how much they know about what you and who you know doesn't know. Looking back, some of the most significant business failures could have been avoided, or at least mitigated with just a little bit of proactive networking. Kodak, Blockbuster, and Borders Group are all prime examples who failed to foresee industry trends due to their insular, siloed, keep to ourselves kind of culture and lack of networking. I mean, just imagine for a second that Kodak had formed partnerships or alliances with technology companies, how they would be positioned to essentially take over this entire wave of digital photography. The same can be said for Blockbuster. Imagine for a second that they got on board with changing trends in consumer behavior and became a leader in streaming services. As for Borders, well, Amazon came in and completely ate their lunch as they failed to see the emerging trends and changes in technology and consumer behavior. Now, there are obviously other factors at play to lead to all of these businesses collapsing. However, it just can't be said enough that by failing to network, they failed to see changing trends and staying current and staying aware of what was going on in the actual real world. This is also one of the big reasons that I created the Discord community Modern Marketing Hub, where you can chat and ask questions and engage with others on the same journey as you. You can join it for absolutely free just by visiting modernmarketinghub.com, and I'll make sure to put a link in the descriptions below. Next mistake, opening digital Pandora's box. Let me ask you a question. You ever tried to log in somewhere and realized that you forgot your password? And then when you went to reset it, they made you come up with a completely new one full of all kinds of different letters and numbers and random symbols? Where's the sacred ibis key? And you realize that it was only a matter of time before you completely forgot this new password too. Now, you could just text your new password to yourself, but storing and sharing sensitive information via text or email or instant messenger is not only a security risk, but also a giant time waster of having to dig through old message chains trying to find that one password that you think is the most current one. It's not. And what about storing and accessing other important credentials and information like alarm codes and PIN numbers and Wi-Fi passwords? Where are you supposed to keep those safe and secure? And to make things 10 times harder, what about when you have to do all of this for your team members and contractors and employees and anybody else that you need to provide access to? What then, Adam? What then? Well, my friend, let me tell you. It's called NordPass, and it allows you to save confidential information securely in one place that can then be accessed and updated by others when needed and when you decide. It helps you forget about account resets because all your credentials are saved in one secure place with just a single click, and allows you to log into your online accounts seamlessly with usernames and passwords populating automatically into login fields whenever you need them. You can use NordPass to make payments and purchases without having to tediously type out your details every time, and you can share access between team members or contractors in order to make sure that collaboration is fast and easy. So instead of spending days or weeks granting access to company systems, to new team team members or contractors during onboarding, or worse still, failing to revoke access to team members who have parted ways with the company. Not so fun fact, 1 in 4 people are still able to log into accounts from previous jobs, granting them access to information that they don't need and shouldn't be able to see. Well, with NordPass, you can give or revoke access instantly with the click of a button. But the best way to see just how helpful this tool really is to try it yourself, which is why I've put a link down in the descriptions below this video where you can see NordPass Business in action with a free 3-month trial. All you need to do is click the link and use the code ADAMNordPass. You'll be all set. You see, in today's digital world, data is more valuable than gold. And yet, more often than not, we use sketchy, easy to crack password. I added a 1 there at the end to throw off the hackers. Accept terms and conditions without reading the fine print that gives companies access to, well, everything, and often fail to take even basic safety precautions in order to protect our most precious assets. Things like credit card numbers and client and customer information and intellectual property. But more on that in just a minute. Here's the deal. Most people out there are good, really good. But there are a few bad apples that, if left unchecked, can completely ruin your fruit salad. And by fruit salad, I mean business. Like Equifax, the credit reporting agency, that experienced a breach in 2017 that was so big and bad that it affected around 147 million consumers and all kinds of sensitive data like social security numbers and birth dates and addresses, driver's license numbers, all of which were exposed. And Equifax spent nearly $1.4 billion in response efforts, technology upgrades, and legal settlements, not to mention the severe blow to the company's reputation. But they weren't alone. Target, Yahoo, Marriott, British Airways, they all faced significant data breaches as well, costing these corporations billions in losses and, more importantly, causing untold damage to their reputations. So make sure to invest in cybersecurity because you're not just protecting your business, you're safeguarding the trust of your customers, which could be argued is the most valuable resource of all. Okay, time to talk IP. When most people think of intellectual property, more commonly referred to as IP, they tend to think of patents and trademarks and all kinds of fancy, expensive copyright law involving tedious piles of paperwork. It sounds like it's way more hassle than it's actually worth. But companies like Xerox and Kodak and BlackBerry and Segway are all perfect examples of how failing to properly protect their intellectual property can lead to massive losses in revenue. For example, you may not have known, or may not have cared, that Xerox's graphical user interface, GUI, basically revolutionized computer interfaces. As before that, the only way to get a computer to do what you actually wanted it to do was by inputting long lines of text and code in good old-fashioned MS-DOS format. But Xerox failed to recognize the true genius of their invention, and so they left the door wide open for Apple and Microsoft to come in and basically dominate the market with GUI-based operating systems. BlackBerry did the same thing by underestimating the value of its IP, again leaving the door wide open for companies like Apple and Samsung to come in and dominate that market. Just like how you need to protect your data, you also need to protect your ideas, especially if they're a key part to how you do business or generate revenue. And doubly especially if they're the primary way that you do business or generate revenue, which is what this next mistake is all about. I'm sure you've heard the term, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, the old saying is just as true today as it was when it was first written back in 1605. This is because an over-reliance on any one single entity, be it an employee or a vendor or technology or platform, can leave your business open and vulnerable. Back when I used to do consulting work for clients, I used to keep all of my ideas and my notes stored in a shared Google Drive folder that the client always had access to. Now, this is going to sound kind of morbid, but I called this my Adam's Hit by a Bus folder, essentially in order to make sure that the client was protected and had access to all of my ideas and information just in case something happened to me. Now, fortunately, I never got hit by a bus, but there were times when my power went out, or my internet wasn't working, or I got sick and just couldn't answer the questions or provide them access to the resources that they needed to make important decisions. Well, I've carried this hit by a bus mentality forward to today, where I've applied it to pretty much every single area of critical importance in my business and with any business that I own or invest in. Essentially, whenever something bad happens, I just swap out the broken part, put in something new, nobody misses a beat. A good example, though, of how things can go horribly wrong is the KFC chicken supply chain debacle. Back in 2018, KFC switched their delivery contract to DHL, and what was meant to be a simple change turned into a full-blown crisis, with hundreds of restaurants running out of chicken, which was kind of a big deal. And their over-reliance on just one supplier cost them big time. Apple's decision to start developing its graphics processing units, GPUs, in-house caused a similar problem for Imagination Technologies, a UK-based company who was basically kept alive by Apple and who watched their stock price completely fall when their major customer pulled the plug. And this is where the whole concentration versus diversification thing comes into play. You see, concentration is important when it comes to focusing on a certain area or a certain segment of the market, doing one thing extremely well rather than a ton of things at kind of an average level. But diversification is how you protect yourself so that you're able to continue doing this one thing extremely well for a long period of time. And I appreciate it's hard to find the perfect balance, which just so happens to be what makes this next mistake so incredibly dangerous and so important to talk about. Balancing the desire to grow your business with the need to delegate effectively is one of the biggest challenges in business. You want to grow and you know that you can't do everything yourself, but you also know that bringing in other people and delegating tasks is going to require letting go and putting trust in them. And as a recovering self-confessed control freak, this was one of the hardest pills to swallow early on in my career, and no doubt has cost me millions of dollars. But it's a lesson that I had to learn, and I'm really glad I did, because today my business now runs smoother and faster and more profitably. Unfortunately, other businesses out there weren't so lucky and didn't manage to learn this lesson in time. Remember Friendster? No? Just me? The founder, Jonathan Abrams, was notorious for micromanaging his team, and his overwhelming need to control every aspect of the business ultimately caused Friendster to lose ground to rivals like MySpace and Facebook. Pets.com is another tragic example, as their rapid scaling and poor delegation led to their ultimate downfall. Despite a successful marketing campaign and being a pretty well-recognized brand, the company expanded way too quickly without establishing a sustainable business model. This rapid scaling led to higher operational costs, and their failure to delegate effectively resulted in a lack of strategic direction for the company. They had their initial public offering in February of 2000, and by November of that exact same year, Pets.com was out of business. And I don't want that to happen to you, which is why you definitely want to make sure to check out NordPass by clicking the link in the descriptions below. And to discover the right way to go about growing your business, you're definitely going to want to check out the video that I've got linked up right here. So make sure to tap or click that now, and I'll see you in there in just a second.